The most awaited session today on SEBI's third topic, that is security law's third topic. We had already covered the study plan and the overview of SERA and of course SEBI Act. And as already told today, the third branch of security laws is SEBI LODR regulations, which we are going to deal. Very important from exam point of view and practical point of view, but I don't want students to study everything and because security law itself already you have SEBI Act to study and you have SERA to study, so not that much detail, but you have to study the overview and most of the provisions. So I will give you an overview and each areas just brief of the overview and what are the areas you have to study as per the study plan. So this is our topic today, SEBI LODR regulations 2015, and it is amended, and this is an amended presentation too. So here we go. Most of the students have a doubt as to what is basically a SEBI LODR regulations, and you all know that there was syllabus, you have something called a SEBI ICDR regulations. So the D in both deals with nothing but disclosure requirements, disclosure. Now the institute asks you to study the SEBI LODR regulations, that is listing, obligations and disclosure requirements. What is basically LODR regulation and what is the difference between ICDR regulation, erstwhile the old syllabus ICDR regulations and LODR regulations. ICDR regulations speaks about pre-listing compliances, that is what are the eligibility to be for listing, prospectus, red herring prospectus, what the way how you have to plan your IPO, various IPOs like bonus issue, rights issue, FPO, IPO, eligibility for IPO, promoters contributions, lock-in period, etc., etc. These are the things which deal in the ICDR regulations. When coming to LODR regulations, this regulation speaks about the post-listing scenario. After listing, once you get listed, what are the compliances you have to look, what are the disclosures you have to look, what are the conditions you have to comply. Essentially, this LODR regulations contents was already part under the listing agreement with the stock exchanges. But what happens is various stock exchanges or for different issues there are multiple compliances, multiple conditions. So there was a confusion. So that is why now this law, that is SEBI LODR regulations, is a post-listing compliance requirement which is codified and which is now standardized. So that's it. So what is LODR regulation? LODR regulations are post-listing obligations for a listed entity, substituted for the erstwhile listing agreement, mainly the contents basically, and mainly deals with listing obligations, mainly deals with post-listing disclosures, and of course the very important thing is corporate governance norms. So students, what is LODR regulation? LODR regulations is the compliance to be done by a listed entity after it is been listed. Got it? The main three things is listing obligations, disclosure requirements, and of course the very important thing, corporate governance norms. So that is, so we'll go slide by slide. So the first slide, the study plan is basically you have to study the purpose, which we just told in the previous slide, and you have to read the principles of CG. Here CG means not central government, here CG means corporate governance. You must read and understand the basics of corporate governance, like there is principles which is by OECD, which is in the study material itself, Organization of Economic Development and Cooperation. They had given a principles of corporate governance. Basically a student, while before starting studying LODR regulation, should clearly understand the purpose of this regulation, and you have to study the various principles of corporate governance, especially as listed by the OECD organization. Now, second thing you have to study is the applicability of this regulation. This regulation, if you study, you will see that it is applicable to all the listed entities for all the issues of securities, like equity shares, preference shares, non-convertible debentures, Indian deposit receipts, units of the mutual funds, etc. So there is a paragraph study material or the material whichever you prefer. You have to study the applicability of the same. Now here we go, each and every one, regulations are very important. So the basic two things is you have to study the purpose, principles of corporate governance, then the applicability of LODR regulations. Now you have to study chapter wise. What are the important things you have to study? Point number 1 which you have to study is compliance officer. You have to study the provisions relating to compliance officer. Regulation 6 deals with it. Who is a compliance officer? The qualified company secretary, whole-time company secretary appointed by the company is being designated as the compliance officer of a listed company. You have to study his obligations, his role. What are the obligations generally? Regulatory compliance, coordinating with the stock exchanges and coordinating with the depositories, monitoring the grievance redressal procedures of the company, and he should be a CS basically. So this is very important. Regulation 6, the opening regulation which you have to study is the role and responsibility of a compliance officer of a listed company. Every listed company should appoint mandatorily a compliance officer. Who is a compliance officer? He is the company secretary appointed in the company. Second one is appointment of STA, that is the share transfer agent. That is a general provision, you have to just read it, regulation 7. So this slide by slide, I will conclude for you. This slide deals with very important thing. You have to study the purpose, read the general principles of corporate governance, then study the applicability of this regulation, then study regulation 6 compliance officer, especially his roles and responsibilities. Then you have to study the procedures for the appointment of the STA, share transfer agent, who is responsible for registering the shares and share transfer procedures. Next bunch, here we go. The second bunch you have to study, apart from the first bunch which you have to told, and the second bunch you have to study, dear students, is with regarding to the payment of dividend, regulation 12. You all know the section 123, 124, 125 of Companies Act, which you have studied, dividend provision, but you have to study some extra provisions for these regulations. This is with respect to payment of dividend, regulation 12. There is methods of payment of dividend. They had allowed you electronic clearance service, that is ECS, direct credit, NEFT and RTGS system. This is split out in the regulations itself, the different modes of paying the dividend amount. That is regulation 12. Next one you have to study is regulation 13, which is very important for exam point of view. There is a 2-line which speaks about grievance redressal mechanism. Whose grievance? Shareholders' grievance, security holders' grievance. As already told you, the SEBI law itself, the prima facie objective of any SEBI law is investor protection. The protection of the securities holders, their interest, their grievances, redressal, etc. So that is very important that you have to look into the SEBI redressal mechanism as stated in regulation 13. The mechanism is now online. You may know that online system is called SCORES, SEBI Compliant Redressal System. There is a reporting compliances, there is a statement preparation, you have to read your study material, the whatever material you refer. Grievance redressal mechanism, nothing but reporting, first basically complying with the redressal mechanism is listed by the SEBI, and you have to report, and any complaint is received from the SEBI portal, you have to compliance, you have to make a statement of compliance. So that compliance management online software of SEBI is called, or the portal is called SCORES, SEBI Compliant Redressal System. Dear students, now the very important topic which you have to study in the LODR regulation, and which is very simple to study, is the composition of board. As you all know, a listed entity has to follow 2 sets of law. One is the Parent Companies Act, and they have to comply with the SEBI LODR regulations. For composition of board, you all know how many directors, minimum number of directors, section 149, 151, go on. You had studied all the things in the company law. You have to study in addition to the compliance of company law, which has been stated by SEBI in the SEBI LODR regulations. And here there is a composition of board of directors is important. For example, point of view, regulation 17 deals with the same. Regulation 17, you have to go into detail of the regulation 17. They have given some specificity, some composition. For example, the composition of the board should have an optimum mix of ED and NED. What is ED and NED? Executive directors and non-executive directors. What is an optimum combination? For example, your board has 10 directors, 5 executive director, 5 non-executive director. That is called, it is not equal, I am saying optimum combination. For example, if you have a 10 directors in the board, then 5 should be the executive and 5 should be non-executive. So that is the composition which is stated in the SEBI LODR regulation. A listed company have to comply with this also, apart from complying with the Companies Act provisions. Now coming to very important, this is small thing is very important regarding chairman and number of ID. What is an ID? Independent director. The number of ID is linked with the chairman's position, whether chairman's position is whole time or part time, whether chairman is executive or non-executive. I will say here, if the chairman is executive director, then 50%, that is half of the board, shall be independent director. Got it? And if the chairman is a non-executive director, then 1/3 of the board shall be independent directors. I repeat again, the number of independent directors in a listed company will depend upon whether the chairman is an executive chairman or a non-executive chairman. If the chairman is an executive chairman, that is, if the chairman is an executive director of the company, then 50%, that half of the board shall be independent director. And if the chairman is a non-executive director, he is not coming regularly to the office, he is only attending the meeting, that is called as a non-executive chairman, that is a non-executive director, chairman, then the number of independent directors shall be 1/3. So this is very important for exam point. If I repeat again, the post of the chairman or the position of the chairman or the status of the chairman and the number of independent directors has been linked. If the chairman is executive director, 50% of the board should be independent director. If the chairman is a non-executive director, then 1/3 of the board shall be independent. So this is very important for exam point of view. Okay. So this slide speaks about payment of dividend, compliance with trustee system, and the composition of board. Got it? Now coming to this slide speaks about other provisions which prima facie deals with committee, and thank God you might have already studied the company law portion about audit committee, about NRC, that is the nomination remuneration committee, then SRC, that is the stakeholders relation committee. The same thing here, but we have some additional compliances with regarding the number of meetings, additional compliance with regard to the quorum, additional compliance with regard to composition. So I repeat again, for a listed company they have two sets of law they have to comply. One is the Companies Act, second one is the LODR regulation. Both they have to comply. Both they have to comply means they have to comply in such a way that both laws are complied with. You should not violate. If you comply LODR regulation, that other should not violate. So what is the principle? Harmonious construction. Rule of harmonious construction should be applied. That means Companies Act should also be complied with, and also the LODR regulation should be complied. You have to give effect to the compliance of both the law. So, because why I am saying these committees are already in the Companies Act, 177, 178, you already have section 177 and 178, you already have these committees. But the same committee is for a listed company. For listed company, there is additional compliances with respect to the committee, right? So, audit committee is dealt with section regulation 18, how to read the details. NRC, that is the nomination remuneration committee, regulation 19, SRC, that is the stakeholders relation committee, regulation 20. And you already know in Companies Act itself we have 177, 9 subsequent 10 regarding the vigil mechanism. Here also we have a vigil mechanism, regulation 21. Then regarding additional compliance regarding to related party transactions. So this slide prima facie deals with committee. Mind you, you may expect one question from committee. Very important. Got it? Audit committee, NRC, that is nomination remuneration committee, SRC, that is stakeholders relationship committee. Fourth one, RMC, that is a new one for listed, exclusive for listed company. RMC, that is the risk management committee. Mind you, one question may be arised. Apart from that, vigil mechanism, which you already know in the Companies Act, the same thing. For all committees, I recommend you to study the composition, right? The meetings, the number of meetings, including the quorum, etc. The role of the committee, and who is the chairman. For all committees, take it from me, for all committee you have to study a standardized format. Study the composition of all committee, the meetings of all the committee, the role of the committee, and who is the chairman of the. Most of the chairman will be independent director or non-executive director. So this slide will fetch you a mark, because this is easy, because if you are thorough in 177 and 178 of Companies Act, this slide is very easy. You can study. Just prepare a comparative chart. You go to your home, just take a notebook and you compare what are the provisions of audit committee, provisions of Companies Act. Then the other side you have to write provisions of LODR regulation. NRC, Companies Act, LODR regulation. SRC, Companies Act, LODR regulation. Vigil mechanism, Companies Act, LODR regulation. So if you make a comparative chart of these things, your job will be easy and your brain will identify the difference between the provisions of Companies Act and the LODR regulations. Shall we move? Yeah, here we go. This slide is also important as far as this. Now we are dealing with more with corporate governance with respect to subsidiary listed company. That is not that much important. Independent director provisions, which is very important. I told you independent director provision is very important. You have to study in detail. You might have already studied under 149, but you have to study indeed 149(4), subsection 4, subsection 6. You have to study it, but you have to detailedly study independent provisions in the LODR regulations also. And I would request make a comparative chart. Make a comparative chart. Companies Act provisions, LODR provisions. So it will be easy. Then coming to quarterly compliances, Quarterly Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 for a listed company, you have to file a statement of number of compliance spending, quarterly compliance report on corporate governance to be certified by the CEO and CFO of the company, shareholders pattern, audited Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 statements or limited review financial statement. This is a simple compliance slide. You have to study these. In this slide, you have to study corporate governance with regard to the subsidiary listed company, right? Very importantly, ID provisions, independent director provisions, then quarterly compliances, the statements filing statement of number of compliance, quarterly compliance certificates to be certified by CEO, CFO, and of course audited statement or limited review statement. And now the last slide for the session is annual compliances. In the previous slide, what we have done, we had studied quarterly compliances. This slide we are studying what are the annual compliances. What are the annual compliances? An annual report has to be filed, submitted to the stock exchange. You have to publish the website, give all to the stock exchange, all the bunch of annual report to the stock. Three things. What are the three things? One is to file or submit with the stock exchanges. You have to publish in your website and give it to all the shareholders. Time limits, etc. You have to refer the study material. There are prescribed time limits for giving this annual report, filing Q1, Q2, Q3, QP report, Q4 reports, and of course annual compliance report also. Now coming to annual compliance report on corporate governance to be certified by CEO and CFO and to be certified by a certificate by a practicing professional, by a CA, CS or cost account. So friends, the last two slides speaks about compliances, about disclosures and filings of that. Filings is, or the statements filings is divided two types. One is quarterly compliances and second is annual compliances. There are quarterly filings and you have to study the time limits. There are annual compliances, you have to study the time limits. So altogether you will appreciate that studying LODR regulation is not a tough job if you understand the subject and if you cut the topics into these type of slides. Got my point? So I don't want to go into back and say everything again because I told you your securities law syllabus is divided into 3 packs: SEBI Act, SCRA, LODR. So we can compromise of the three. More time should be spent to the LODR regulation because of the volume involved. It is very easy to study. So before I conclude, I will give you a bird's eye view of what we had learned, and I request you to study this chapter very, very detailed and keeping in mind the backdrop of SEBI law. Friends, I will give you a bird's eye view of what to study again. Simple bullet points. Purpose of LODR regulations. 1. Principles of corporate governance. 2. Applicability. 3. Compliance officer role. 4. Appointment of STA. 5. Payment of dividend. 6. Grievance redressal mechanism and scores. 7. Composition of board, very important, 8. Audit committee, very important, 9. NRC, 10. SRC, 11. RMC, 12. Vigil mechanism, 13. Related body transactions, 14. Then corporate governance to the list subsidiary listed companies, 15. Independent director, very important, 16. Quarterly compliances, 17. Annual compliances 18. So 18 areas minimum you have to study. How many areas? 18 area minimum you have to study. 18 area you have to minimum study. So if you can study at least these 18 areas, simply 18 regulations in LODR regulations with this backdrop, surely you are going to have a good command over LODR regulations. And mind you, if you handle SEBI Act, SCRA and LODR, a good bunch of pack is in your pockets from your security laws area under the area economic laws. More videos are coming soon in the economic area topics and more into the computer topics. Again, take care of your health, stay at home, have a good healthy homely environment and take care of yourself. Thank you.